And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brendan Deek. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We're talking strictly quarterbacks today, and I am joined by Mike Sando from The Athletic. He's the author of the NFL QB Tiers, one of the biggest pieces written every year. Kind of shows that football season is right around the corner. And I'm happy to be joined by Mike. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, thanks, Brendan. Good to be here. Love to talk quarterbacks. It's always fun, and you're right. The season's 1 week and 1 day away as we record this.
Okay, so for the listeners that don't know, explain the process of the article that you wrote, the QB Tiers, how long you've been doing it, what goes into it, kind of just give a zoomed out version of it.
Yeah, this is the 11th year of the quarterback tiers, and the way that it works is when the draft's over, I'll put together a list of all the veteran quarterbacks that could be starters in a season. Usually it's 35 or so, and I will go to 50 coaches and executives in a league that I know, that I trust, that I have a good rapport with. And it's not the same 50 every year, but there's definitely some overlap year to year. And I will present them with the criteria for the quarterback tiers that has been developed really through help from them. As my curiosity really grew into how the league looks at these players, we developed a handful of tiers that we can put them in. I'll go through all the quarterbacks with each one of these guys, talk to all of them, and then I will compile the results. So when it's done, tier one being the best, Patrick Mahomes gets all 50 votes in tier one. But after that, there's split opinions on some of the quarterbacks. There's, different people have slightly different opinions or maybe big different opinions. And in the end, when you have the 50 results, it kind of smooths out. You can put it together and you develop, some guys who fit solidly into different tiers. So for tier one, it was Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. Very small group. It's usually a little bit bigger group in tier one, but Justin Herbert fell out. Aaron Rodgers, with his injury situation and age, fell out. But those two are right in a group led by Lamar Jackson, including Matt Stafford, that get a lot of tier one votes. Didn't get enough to have a majority of them, but are right there on the line. You might consider them tier 1.5ers. And really, what separates the guys in the top tier is not only the consistency of elite production, but when you have to throw the ball, that is a real differentiator in the league. There's a lot of people who can put up great numbers in a system. When they're on track, they're doing great. When it looks perfect for Tua Tagovailoa, he's going to pass for 4,500 yards and hit deep touchdowns all the time. But when you have to drop back and pass, when the defense knows you're going to do it, we kind of separate some guys a little bit. And that's a big line there between 1 and 2 for some of the players.
Ever thought about just making a Patrick Mahomes tier, like a tier 0?
Yeah, it was actually that was one of the jokes in the piece. One of the guys I spoke to in the league said, "Can we have a tier 0?" Because really, he is in a different category, and he's in a little bit of a different category historically too. If you look at the great quarterbacks, the championship-winning quarterbacks, they almost all came from teams that also were really good on defense. And you can go back to Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, Joe Montana, right? Tom Brady. And the ones that were great quarterbacks that didn't have that consistently, like a Dan Marino or an Aaron Rodgers or a Drew Brees, they have a hard time winning any Super Bowls. Even though they're great, they might win one. Maybe get a chance. Peyton Manning got a second one, but it was a defensive team that did it. And so Mahomes actually in 2019 and 22 won championships without having top defenses. That really separates him, I think, historically. And then last year, he won it without even having that great of an offense with what was around him. So he really is special. You really could make the case he's in his own tier. He's unanimous. If we could double unanimous, if we could have 1,000 voters, it would be 1,000-0.
Okay, so what really caught me off guard with this article was, like you said, they're at the top. There were only 3 quarterbacks in tier 1. Lamar Jackson, after winning 2 MVPs in the league and having a magnificent 2023 season, is in tier 2 of your listing. Explain this to me because I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, well, there's no criteria for the MVP, right? I mean, it's just you vote for who you think had a good season. Nobody said to me, "Kyle, Patrick Mahomes, he is in tier 1, but he was only 7th in MVP voting, so I'm not so sure." And nobody said, "Hey, Dak Prescott was 2nd in MVP voting. Why isn't he in tier 1? The challenge for Lamar Jackson has been in those games, in those situations when, and we've seen this in the playoffs, when he's had to pass the ball, when his running isn't a threat. Yet voters are still conflicted on that. Even voters who acknowledge that that hasn't been a strength for him and acknowledge that that's an important aspect for any quarterback to have as a differentiating aspect, because the game gets reduced to that at its hardest points and most important points. And it's what you have to overcome if you're going to go all the way a lot of the time. He's so dynamic. He's such a matchup consideration that some people are like, I'm putting him in tier 1 anyway, or he almost deserves his own category. But I think if you look at him, he's the 4th best quarterback in the league here, according to this, which is really good. He's got more tier 1 votes than he's ever had before because they did shift to more of a passing attack. And passing is what is ultimately most important in football, in championship football, and it's what's most respected. And so as he continues to develop in that area, I think he will continue to get closer and get into tier 1. Certainly if he would have had, I think, more than 10 points against the Chiefs in that game when they had a historically good team, historically good defense, he might have passed Josh Allen and these guys if he had done that. But it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will.
Okay, so let's talk Jalen Hurts here. So an offensive coach or a general manager told you the word is out there. If you run the zero blitz against Hurts or show zero and back everyone out, he will panic. He can't handle pure pass. When he got hurt and he became immobile, they had to throw the ball, he showed what he was. I think they may have paid a guy that they're going to have to really get a good team around to win football games. Not the best commentary on Jalen Hurts. So what was the conversation surrounding him when you were doing this piece?
I thought most of the conversation was a little bit more negative for him than you would think, although his standing stayed pretty good. I think he only slipped a few spots from last year. He's still solidly in tier 2. There's a lot of respect for him, the way he approaches his game. I mean, he just seems like a true professional, a guy who's striving to get better all the time. But there was a hope, I think, an expectation after that Super Bowl season that he would take another step as a passer. And yet, I think partly with Shane Steichen leaving, they had some turmoil on their team, on the staff, even though they had a 10-1 start. It really imploded. There were some moments when he had a chance to step up as a passer where it just didn't come together. It just didn't work. And, it looked bad. So I think that's where that's coming from. And those questions are renewed, and he can go out this season and change the narrative again.
Okay, Dak Prescott. This one I really found interesting. He proves year in and year out that he cannot get it done in the postseason. What was the feedback like from Dak Prescott when you talked to these guys?
Yeah, a great quote there was Dak Prescott can roll out of bed and throw for 450 yards, which is true. He's among the all-time leaders in the history of the league for most 450-yard games. But there is enough of a body of work here with 10 seasons or so of starting where the same thing kind of happens to him in the playoffs, even if he has a good team around him. So at a certain point as a quarterback, most important position, you're going to be accountable for that. And I think that's why that Dak has risen to be around the 10th best quarterback in the league most years, but doesn't go really higher.
Did anyone talk about why the Cowboys haven't paid him or what's going on there when you were doing this?
No, I didn't really talk too much about the contract part of it. I do think he has earned this spot, though, where he can become a free agent at the end of the year. So he has a lot of leverage. I think he's made a lot of money, and so he can prioritize how important is it for him to flex his muscle maybe and have options or consider going somewhere else even. I don't know what his motivation is at this point. Does he want to play it by ear and see? Because Jerry Jones did not commit to Mike McCarthy either. He is going the last year of his deal. So if you're Dak, you're in a great position to play it out if you want. I just don't know what his motivation is. If he wants security and stay with Dallas, maybe he'll do a deal. But he's in great position to consider what his options are. And who knows, maybe they're going to hire a coach next year that he doesn't want to be with or something, right? Maybe he likes McCarthy. I don't know. He's played good ball under him. I know that.
I actually just had your coworker Deshaun Reed on for my AFC West preview, and Dak Prescott in the Las Vegas Raiders jersey. Make it happen. I think it would. I think it would look good. Okay, Aaron Rodgers, another fascinating one to me. He got 23 tier 1 votes. That's more than Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, a lot of guys at the top of your list. Explain to me what coaches and general managers had to say about Aaron Rodgers.
Well, everybody, most of them think that if he could be healthy for the whole year, that he would probably be a tier one quarterback. Some of them think that there was some decline at the end of his Green Bay time, and that with adding injury and adding age, that maybe he's a high tier two at this point. But there's enough uncertainty over his health at this point. We just haven't seen him play as a Jet other than 4 snaps. And so I think there was a little bit more skepticism than even I expected. He got votes in 4 different tiers.
Mm-hmm.
He got 2 tier 4 votes, which tier 4 can be that we don't have enough information. So you could make that case that, hey, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen him play for 2 years. Could be part of it. But that's a lot of variance for somebody. It reminds me a little bit of Deshaun Watson was like that maybe last year. You know, he got votes across the board because people just don't know what they're getting. And it's a little bit that way with Rodgers.
His counterpart, Jordan Love, I thought was another interesting one. So he got 1 tier 1 vote. So someone out there thinks he's a top edge quarterback in the league, but he gets at the end of tier 2 in your piece. What did everyone have to say about him?
I thought the commentary on him was overwhelmingly positive, and hopeful. And so, maybe in a year from now, there's some Jalen Hurts style quotes in there, right? If it doesn't happen, but I think people really liked what they saw and were impressed. Remember, he had a super young cast around him. That was a little bit of an issue for Aaron Rodgers late in his career. No-name receivers after Devontae Adams was traded. This young quarterback, Jordan Love, seemed to grow with those guys, seemed to embrace it, seemed to really have some big games and have some star moments, especially obviously in the playoff game against Dallas. So I think that was a pretty good commentary on him. And also to make it into tier 2 already, albeit he's the last guy in there, that's pretty good for, a limited body of work.
Yeah, I thought he was so damn good down the stretch last year. Like, I thought him and C.J. Stroud were arguably like 2 most fun guys to watch in the NFL. C.J. Stroud on your tier list is in the top 10 and kind of set the bar. I believe you put it in your piece. He set the bar for year 2 quarterbacks. What do you make of C.J. Stroud going to this year? What did people tell you about him? And do you think he can be a tier 1 quarterback by next year?
Well, no one pointed out anything that's going to hold him back. There's no one who has concerns about some fatal flaw or something that's being overrated. They think he checks all the boxes. So that's really encouraging for Houston. I do wonder a little bit if he gets a bit of a bump because people thought the Texans were going to be so bad. They ended up having a pretty good team. The receiver situation was better than people thought. Offensive line was better than people thought. Probably their young, inexperienced head coach and offensive coordinator were actually probably pretty good. There were a lot of question marks going in about the team. And so when he shows up and he's the number, and then he has a good year and they win, he probably got a lot of credit. Maybe he even got more credit than he typically might have gotten or a rookie would have gotten because people thought that wasn't necessarily a great situation to be going to. That being said, there's only seems to be optimism around him.
Okay, so I have to ask you about this. Josh Allen is your 3rd quarterback. He's in tier 1. Someone gave him a tier 3 vote, Mike.
So the same person. Well, so the Mahomes and Burrow are the only guys here who didn't get a tier 3 vote. So some of that is for Josh Allen. I think it might have been the same person who gave Allen and Lamar Jackson tier 3. Somebody who is saying these guys are overly reliant on running the ball, and that's going to dry up when you need it the most, I think. And for Josh Allen, a penchant for making some big mistakes and having some strings of turnovers. That's an outlier vote. I mean, if you talk to 50 people, you're going to get one person who gives a tier 1 to Jordan Love, and you're going to get one person who gives a tier 3 to Josh Allen. And it doesn't mean those people are idiots. It means their scale's different or they're maybe a little bit contrarians. But it all rounds in together to not really change the picture much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Deshaun Watson. When I opened your piece, I kind of ran to Deshaun Watson. I was fascinated to see what NFL executives, coaches, and general managers had to say about him. So an NFL executive or coach told you about Deshaun Watson. I wonder if he loves it enough. He should be way better than this. What did you make of the feedback on Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, I mean, just what's going on here, right? I mean, he had all the stuff with the lawsuits, and then, he just hasn't been able to stay on the field, and he's only played 12 games. But when he's played, it just hasn't looked good. And why is that? He's playing in a system that seems to be quarterback friendly. Some people question the fit for the type of the way he wants to play. Maybe Ken Dorsey comes in and brings in some of the RPOs and some of that stuff a little bit more. but when people who are talented, when the results are bad for them over a long period of time, then the mind goes to like, okay, what am I missing? What's missing with this guy? So you start to see some of that stuff creep in. For somebody like Deshaun Watson, he has a fully guaranteed contract that pays him another $130-some million. So you wonder, that's the type of thing that would come to mind, right? It's like, is the passion there? Is something, what's missing with this thing? You can't figure it out. You can't figure out how this player who was so good isn't as good as Joe Flacco. And it just doesn't compute.
Okay, let's kind of zoom out a little bit and just talk about the piece itself. What was different this year than other years?
Well, only 3 guys in tier 1 is the lowest since 2016. So that probably meant, a little bit of a bigger, like there were 11 quarterbacks in tier 2, which is the most since 2016, which is the same year that they only had 3 in tier 1. So I think that was something that stood out. The other thing is, if you look at the tier definitions, okay, so tier 3 definition, legitimate starter, but needs better run game and or defense to win. A lower volume drop back offense suits him. You don't want to be featuring the quarterback too much in the pass game. If you go to tier 3, the top 4 guys, Tua, $53 million a year, Trevor Lawrence, $55, Kyler Murray, big contract, Deshaun Watson, big contract. It's a lot of money tied up in guys who the consensus here says you're winning with them. You're not really winning because of them. So I think that's interesting.
Okay, let's ask your opinion. So, of course, like you said, only 3 in tier 1. Lamar is at the top of tier 2. Give me your opinion on this. Would you have put more people in tier 1? Would you have put more people out at tier 2? Like, how would you rank the top 5 quarterbacks in the league?
I like how it came out, and I usually do. I think it makes sense. I think it really does make sense. I do think the component of tier 1 that says expertly handles the pure pass situations is important. I do think the game gets set to that. So I kind of like how it is. Lamar Jackson's right on the edge of that, but it's not like a bunch of other guys are above him. It's not like he's down in tier 2. Mm-hmm. There's just a little bit of a line drawn there. And so what I look at is the top of tier 2, Lamar, Herbert, Stafford, Rodgers, even maybe Stroud coming in a little bit. That's kind of tier 1.5. I think they're right there with those other 3 guys that you might be more comfortable putting on their back when you have to throw it. And so I usually am. Like this year I thought maybe, like I said, Trevor Lawrence was a little low, but I couldn't find anyone. I didn't know who I was going to move him above. So I really kind of like it. Maybe Geno Smith's a little undervalued, but by a couple spots, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Is there something that someone said to you that really kind of piqued your interest, or really was like, okay, I got to put this down? Like, it's something that kind of caught you off guard when you were interviewing these executives, coaches, and general managers?
Well, I thought one of the best quotes was regarding Aaron Rodgers when it was late in the process of putting this together, and so I knew pretty much, I knew what the vote breakdown was going to be, and I went to one of the guys who had put Rodgers in tier 1, and I said, hey, 18, 25, 27 people, don't have Rodgers in tier 1, and this guy was just like, are those guys from the 29 teams that would instantly be better if he was their quarterback? I thought it was a good line. It just makes you think, like, okay, we can talk about how much he has left, but just on game day Sunday, how many teams are better with Rodgers? It's probably a lot of teams, mm-hmm. including maybe some of those teams that have quarterbacks ahead of him, possibly.
Yeah, the Rodgers thing is so funny. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of caught off guard that I know you said that Aaron Rodgers wasn't tier 1 last year, and I know you said that like he should get the benefit of the doubt and just because of the past success, but like we haven't seen him play in 2 years, and we saw him get injured last year, and I have a very hard time believing he's going to be able to stay healthy at the age of 40. So, like, of course, everyone thinks he's one of the most fascinating players in the league. But I was really, I'm not going to lie, I was caught off guard with him being at number 7.
Yeah. You thought he would be what, higher or lower?
I thought it'd be lower.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, yep. Let's zoom in quickly on a couple more quarterbacks before we get out of here. Russell Wilson was just announced the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback today.
Yeah,
he is number 22 on your list for the quarterback tiers. What did the world or what did the people have to say about Russell Wilson?
that really, if you can't make it with Mike Tomlin there, it's going to be tough to make it anywhere. You think about it, he's gone from Pete Carroll to Sean Payton to Mike Tomlin. Those are pretty good coaches. And Tomlin's a great job of setting the culture and that sort of thing. They have a good defense there. And they have, I think a pretty good offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith, say what you want about him as the head coach, but he got the head coaching job for a reason. It was because of his coordinating. So I think he's in a good spot, but there's not a lot of optimism left around him. I think people feel like the ceiling has come down for Wilson. He lacks the dynamic athletic ability that he once had to make the sensational plays, but he can still possibly manage an offense. I think that'll be fascinating to see how kind of that relationship goes between Wilson and Arthur Smith. And, are they tempted? They're obviously going to play Justin Fields some, have packages for some. How does that work with Wilson? What happens in a game if Wilson has a tough game and Fields comes in and sparks him for a drive, right? That sort of a thing. I think it's just very, very interesting situation without a super high ceiling. I feel like they're a very high floor team that's probably going to, win 9 or 10 games. But how far are you really going to go?
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the executive coach or general manager told you when they ranked Justin Fields tier 2? Because there's one there.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, not off the top of my head, but I would say when you do this, you're going to get some people that grade a little bit easier all the way down the list, and some are a little bit harder all the way down the list. So that could have been somebody. Yeah, that could be somebody, or somebody who feels like, hey, this guy, they never gave him the right offense. I mean, this guy's got a lot. It's somebody who I'm sure would really like Justin Fields and just thinks he has not been put in a good situation yet, and that when he is, he's going to make a really big difference. If you look at the tier 2 definition, what part of it is and or possesses other dimensions special enough to elevate him above tier 3. That could be somebody just saying, this guy's so special with his running that I'm going to put him. He has a superpower. I'm going to put him in. I'm going to put him above those guys in tier 3 who don't have that.
Okay, Mike, before you get out of here, this is your going into 28th season covering the league, I believe.
27th this year, yeah.
27th league, okay. So I got to get some opinions on the season from you before you leave.
Sure.
Sure. Have you made a Super Bowl prediction yet?
Yeah, it's funny. Our staff we just had a staff survey, so I think I went with Kansas City over Green Bay. I decided that I would. Kansas City's it's too hard not to. They can win at any time. And then I thought, well, let's mix it up a little bit on the NFC side. And I wonder if, just the wear and strain of all of getting so close for so long for the 49ers takes a toll. And if some of their key players, stay as healthy as they have the last couple of years, was my only reason to maybe veer away from them.
I think that's actually going to be my Super Bowl prediction. I'm going to have the Chiefs, I believe, from the AFC. I haven't decided from the NFC yet, but I like that a lot. Yeah. Is there a team that people are talking up too much that you think is going to falter this year?
Oh, that's a good one. I was actually thinking the other way around first. I'll call up the list of teams and I can tell you. But the other way around, I was wondering, I wondered about Arizona a little bit, about being a team that could be a little bit better than we think, just because I think the narrative around Kyler Murray has been so negative with, the contract clause and then the injury. He's kind of been written off, but he's a super talented guy. And I think that, if they have a good scheme for him, it wouldn't surprise me if at times they strung together some wins or it looked good, whereas I think their win total, they only won 4 games last year and they didn't even get their win total on the season. So it's not like they overachieved last year, but I think they're at least interesting. And then of the teams with high expectations that I wonder about, go through some of these. I think Detroit's going to be really good again, but they won 12. I'm taking the under on that probably.
Okay. I could buy
I think it's easy to lock in our minds that, wow, they're close and you just stay there, but every season's a little bit different. So we'll see what happens to them. I'm not predicting doom for them, but those will be interesting teams.
I think with Detroit, when I was doing the NFC North preview, I was just staring at their wide receiver depth chart and going, they're a one Ross injury away from being in real trouble on the outside. Like, they lost Josh Reynolds, who was actually really important for them last year. And then your Arizona one just lit up my world, because I actually picked the Arizona Cardinals to make the playoffs. So I'm on board with you there. I think they're going to sneak in.
Yeah,
I think they're going to sneak in at the 17. I think they're being severely underrated. I think they're going to have an amazing run offense.
Yeah.
Trey Benson's looking really good in preseason. I really think Kyler Murray can get back to the like top 10 quarterback play level. I'm all on board with the Cards this year.
Yeah, that was a team that stood out to me. So what do you, in the NFC then, do you see 3 from the NFC West getting in?
I have 2 from the NFC West. I have the 49ers in the division, and then the Arizona Cardinals. I have the Dallas Cowboys missing the playoffs this year, and I have the Chicago Bears, 3 from the NFC North. Bears, Packers.
That's what I was wondering,
Lions.
if you had 3 from NFC North. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm usually the Eagles fan that's buying the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm not the negative Eagles fan. Like, I was all on board last year. I thought last year they were going to make the Super Bowl, like, heading into the playoffs. Like, I thought this was
What makes
their
you
year.
think Dallas will miss? I mean, they've they're second to the Chiefs in wins the last 3 years.
There's a lot kind of tilting toward against them in regression. One, they just didn't bring anyone in this offseason. A stat that really was fascinated by. If you take a look at so Over the Cap does like a stat every year where it's like the average talent and money you spent every offseason. The bottom 3 teams this year were the Chiefs, the Colts, and the Cowboys. And every year, if you average out their wins from the year before, it's about 10.6 wins to 8.6 wins. So it's 2 wins drop. The Chiefs and the Colts re-up their own guys. The Cowboys didn't. So that was the difference making there. They had so much EPA luck on turnovers. They finished first in EPA per play on turnovers. Deron Bland had so many interceptions. They played a really weak schedule last year. This year, they don't get to play this easy schedule. If you take a look at their first like 10 games, like, there's a real scenario here where they're like 3-6, like 4-5, and struggling out to kind of get back. Like, it's CeeDee Lamb really and no one else on the offense. Going into a season with Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy not under contract for the next year, in my opinion, just really bizarre and really risky to have a coach quarterback combo not signed for the next year.
We'll see if Dak gets done, but that's interesting. That's a good case.
Yeah. I think they're going to win 9 games. Like, I think they're going to be 9-8. I think they're just going to miss out. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm selling them this year. I think this could be the downfall of the Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott era in Dallas. Anyways,
interesting.
I won't bore you anymore with some outrageous takes. Mike Sando of The Athletic. Mike Sando of The Athletic. Why don't you plug in where the listeners can follow you, where they can read the quarterback tiers, anything you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. At The Athletic, for sure. You can find my archive there under Mike Sando, and you can find me on X at Sando NFL, and that's where you'll find me. So it should be good.
Mike, appreciate you, and of course, enjoy your 27th season covering the league.
Thank you. Appreciate it.